Good morning. This is Norma Cowie with this week's Norma Talks. Well, last night I got woken up with a thunderous crash of thunder right over me, woke me right up from a deep sleep. And then it was moving fast because I was waiting for the next thunder. And actually, I got up and took a look outside, thinking it would be raining. No rain, but then I could hear thunder to the north. So it moved very fast. But man, I thought that's thunder right above or it's a bomb. And as we live in a little town that doesn't usually have bombs going off, I figured it was thunder, and sure enough, it was. It's and so very often when you get woken up like that, it's one thing to wake up because of you have to go to the washroom or you just sort of woke. It's time to wake up. But when you get woken up out of a deep sleep with a loud noise, it does jar the nervous system. And we often wonder, how are we doing with all this elements that are going on? Change. I don't know about where you are, but where we are, our beautiful summer in the sense of heat has gone. I actually turned the heat on in my apartment the other day because it was chilly. And I'm looking at, I have a little thing inside that shows the temperature outside and the temperature inside. And the temperature inside my apartment was warmer than outside, but it was really chilly where I was. And I don't like being cold because I really feel the cold. So things are changing. And I'm a little bit sad because it seems like only having a few weeks because our spring, summer came, hot weather came late. And now it's leaving because once it's gone, it doesn't come back here. I mean, it can be nice, it can be beautiful, but it's not really hot. I like hot weather. So anyway, besides that, life happens. Most of you have heard that I do weddings. I have a lot of weddings this weekend. Well, 2 weddings on the same day this weekend, and lots of preparation for some other weddings for next weekend. The movement of life, friends visiting out of town, which tonight I end up going out for dinner and having some good conversation, trustingly. It's an interesting world that we live in. And one of the elements I have coming from Monday night doing my mental mind treatments was that sense of being aware. And one of the questions that came up was like, how do you stay with the feeling of the love? How do you create the love? How do you create where you're heading and where you're going? And so what I did today was I pulled up one of the love symbol, which is the Empress. Now, the Empress represents love, but it also represents something else. I'm just going to let it show it up here for a moment or two. We examine the numbering. This is number 3 in the higher arcana of the tarot. Number 12, which is also a 3, 2 and 1 make 3, is the Hanged Man, which really to me is about acceptance. And then number 21, which is, am I right? Yeah, is a 3. So that is the World. So I feel like I'm out of it and I should have picked them all up and I didn't. But anyway, what I wanted to talk about was love has a lot to do with acceptance. Acceptance of the love energy that is outside to bring it inside. The acceptance of others as to who they are and how they're being within themselves. The acceptance of life as it comes along. There are time periods, and I've had this in my life, where it just seems as though everything you do just goes like smooth as silk. And then you hit one thing after the other, where things don't seem to work, where things don't seem to come together the way you want them to. And there's this whole feeling of like, what on earth is going on? And a lot of that has to do with acceptance of circumstances. Now, if you're into astrology, very often it can be explained away. But what I found mostly is that if you are aware of the direction that you're going in, and you go step by step by step, because most of us, we either want to do one of two things. We either want to jump way ahead or we're living in the past. Letting go of the past is probably one of the things. If you think of a boat, and sometimes when boats are on the sea, they put out what they call a sea anchor to hold it so that it's steady. Or if you're going to go into shore, you anchor the boat with, I'm not talking about a little boat, I'm talking about a bit bigger sailboat, is that they put an anchor. Now, how do we anchor ourselves? It's not by looking backwards. We can take lessons from it. We can take understanding from our experience of the past. Past is really important in lots of ways, but not to hang out it, not to think and grieve. And what do I find mostly people have? Regret and guilt. Do we have regret and guilt of anything that hasn't happened yet? No, because we haven't been through that yet. What we have regret and guilt about is things that have happened that we wish didn't happen the way that they happened. But this is where acceptance comes in. This is what happened. Come to terms with it. Let it go. Get back to the present. When we want to change anything, when we want to go and do and create anything at all, we need to be present in the moment. And it's so easy to live backwards, like in the past, or forwards in the future. So we splay it out. Think about being sacrificed on the cross. That's about it. But it's like really is a sense of coming to terms with your past. And the only thing we can do is accept it, forgive ourselves if we're carrying any guilt or regret, and get back into the present so that we can become aware of the direction that we want to go in and what we want to do. Sometimes that is hard. Sometimes we just are so used to beating ourselves up because we didn't do something correctly, or we jumped too fast, or we did whatever it is that we're upset ourselves with. But in reality is that really what it is about is not accepting this is what it is. I call it isness. People who work with me quite often, I'll talk about isness. What is isness? I finally had somebody ask me that. I said, isness is it just is. Whatever it is, it just is. And when we come to terms with that isness, with that this is what it is, we are free to make decisions to make it different. Until we accept, until we come to terms, we cannot move forward. Because we're always stuck as to why isn't it the way either we want it, which it may not ever be the way we want it exactly, because we haven't accepted what's happened in the past. We are a product of the past. Most of us, when you get to my age and we look back, there's a number of things that we wish, we'd handled differently, or we had been different, or we had taken opportunities that were presented to us that we didn't, or we took opportunities that we wish we hadn't, all those kind of things. But we can't live back there because we've already done it. It's gone. What we can do is be in the present, accept where we are, forgive ourselves for what we have done or haven't done. Take that, you might say, the knapsack that a lot of us carry, and let it go, and get present, and then begin to plan as to how we want to be. And I call that beingness. Part of that is coming out of your head and moving into what we call your heart, into your feelings, into your awareness. Part of that is really understanding whatever philosophical spirituality, again, it doesn't matter what you call it, but that knowing of something bigger. Sometimes we don't like that thought of needing to let go. Sometimes we hold on to whatever. I was speaking with a person the other day, and I was talking about how when I first encountered the word surrender, I wanted to come up fighting. What do you mean surrender? Like, how could I do that? But there comes a point in each one's life we need to surrender the pain. We need to surrender maybe lost dreams. We need to surrender anything that disturbs us. Who do we surrender, or what do we surrender to is then the next question. Because if you haven't had any form of understanding of a power that's outside, that's greater than you. I don't want to say it's outside of you, because the idea is, from a lot of what I talk about, is to bring it inside, but is to know there is a power that supports you, that loves you, that cares about you. And sometimes you just got to let go. It's like a surrendering, a giving up to that higher power. Sometimes our burdens that we carry are heavy and we can't find a solution. And often those burdens, I'm not saying always, but often those burdens deal with something outside of ourselves, something that we have no control over, or we cannot dictate, or we cannot do anything. What can we look after? What can we do? And what can we, I'm going to use the word dictate because I just used it, is about us. Our alignment with a greater power, our alignment with love. I call it love. Hey, people can call it whatever they want. There's many names that add to that lightness, to that light, to that joy, to that knowing that no matter what it looks like, it can and does get better. Surrendering to an outside loving force is not easy. And it is something that one feels. And when they have it, they know it's there. And even when you know it's there, very often the desire to do it yourself or to do it your way, and maybe not another, to a collective way, can also be handicapping. We're kind of trained to be independent, but not. But when you surrender to the love, when you surrender to a higher power, I recently asked somebody, how were you raised? Was there a philosophy? Was there a sense of something bigger than you? Because very often what I have found over the years, without meaning to stand on anybody's toes, that very often what I've found is that people sense that it's giving up their power, because it's like we have to ask for whatever, or however that works, and it's giving up the power that you feel you have. Where I was lucky, I had enough that I knew there was something, but then me being me, the forever detective, I wanted to go figure out how that worked and what was that. And it took me a lot of years of exploring and studying and questioning until I found what I believed was something that I was looking for. And what it is when we're looking for something, it's not that we say, oh, here, you take care of it. It's because you co-create your life. You co-create. We do a lot of, in the metaphysical world, about goal setting and awareness, but it's not like you do it. It's like you say, this is how it, to the universal energy, this is what I would like. And it comes, and it doesn't always come the way you want it. It doesn't always show up in the plan that you have in your head. But what I've always found is being more, better, and workable than I would ever imagine myself. So it's about that surrendering to the higher power to bring to you what you need. Now, in my life, and I've talked about this, how I've had miracles occur and happen and situations come along. And what I've always found is recognizing when they come. Sometimes I will ponder, I wonder if, and then maybe 2 days later, somebody will give me the answer. Now, somebody say, oh, well, that's somebody, you just listen. I said, no, it's open to listen. And the answer came. The answer doesn't always come in some great mystical thing. I was telling someone the other day, it's funny, I'm sick talking here and things about what I've said in the last week or so. Many a time I have found the answer to a question I was pondering in my mind on a billboard. That's when I lived in the city and sometimes be on a bus, but I would see on a billboard. I have sat in buses, and people have been talking in front of me and given me the answer. If we are open, if we're willing to surrender our own need to be right, the answers will come if you need them, especially if you ask. I used to question a lot of things because I've read a lot, I've heard a lot, I've listened to speakers. But when I was first beginning, I didn't know too much at all. I was fortunate the way life led me, because that's what it was. I was led, that I had a philosophy of the tarot being taught to me by a whole different way of looking at the tarot at the time, whole different way. And that held me in good stead philosophically. But then I had to fill in the gaps. I had to fill in, well, what did that really mean? Not just knowing something in your mind, this is how it is. And to come to that element of love and understanding, it's not just sitting back and saying, oh, I'm so loved and that's it. No, this is a co-creation of your life. This is a co-creation. And so when things are down and out and you don't know what's coming next, is that there will be something presented. And that's where the surrendering comes, because you don't worry, you don't look back and beat yourself up mentally. You allow yourself to feel your feelings and you breathe them out. Feelings move. Feelings are constantly moving. And we want to be in moving, because if we go into emotion and where they block, they're hard to let go. They're harder to work with. Not impossible, but harder. That's all. And I think no matter what our age is, no matter where we are, we want it to flow as much and as easily as possible. We don't want to feel out in the cold where no one cares, or we don't know how to get into the warmth of life. We've all had moments where we think, oh my goodness, is this it? Well, maybe the young people haven't, but once you get on a bit, because things come at us. Life isn't always, a bowl of cherries. And you think, oh, what am I supposed to do with this? What is this about? And often it's just about acceptance. Okay, now where do we go from here? What's the next step? What's the direction? Am I loving myself through this? Am I giving myself? I'm a great one for really giving myself, you might say, presents of this will make me happy. And that happiness often is temporary, but it takes you out of, if you're feeling depressed, or if you're feeling sad, or if you're feeling just like things aren't working the way I want them to work. Life is full of much beautiful things. And I find not always as much these days as I used to, but I used to just love looking at scenery outside. And if I know that's hard when you're in an inner city, I've lived in places where I've always been around water, and I could go and sit by the water and feel just, I don't know, at one, I guess you could say, at one, because the water moves. I'm around lakes now, not the sea, but the water still moves, still travels into the rivers, and it goes further. And you realize that's what life is. Life is like the blood inside our bodies, consistently moving, consistently changing, growing. We don't realize that all the time our blood is replicating itself. So there's a whole change that happens. There's just so much beauty in the world, so much love in the world, so much sense of being. And sometimes we forget that with the pressure of daily living. The pressure of how do we pay the bills this month? How do we get, this talk about not having enough food, not having enough gas, not having enough. Well, in my mind of thinking, there's always more than enough. So if it's not enough, who's having it? Who's got it? This planet will give us everything that we require. I truly believe that in the deepest part of my heart. And if somebody else is trying to manipulate what the planet can give us, well, that's another story, and not for today. But I want you to know that no matter what is taking place and what is going on, you don't have to feel out of it. You can create and be and part of that whole oneness that is there, the lovingness of the universe, the lovingness of life, and to accept to accept from others the love and the generosity, to accept from others answers, to accept what is presented to you on your path and not reject everything. Because often when we think we're right, we will do that. I don't know that any of us are right, but we do what gives us the most pleasure, the most awareness, and the most joy. And on that note, I'm just going to say, as I'm going to put up this beautiful Empress card again, is to live in abundance. She's above the wheat. She's there. She's got everything that requires. But love, as far as I'm concerned, has a lot to do with acceptance. To accept what is, the joyousness of life. I wish you a great day. I thank you all for your support and your subscriptions and your comments. And I shall be back Sunday and again Monday. Bye for now. Gotta put the recording on.